Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda, and today I'm going to talk about short stories. So it's September. It's actually September 8th. I have to make sure. Yeah, September 8th that I'm filming this. And if all goes well, this video will go up on September 8th. And so it's September. And a lot of people are doing Shorty September. I'm doing a little different version of it, and I was inspired to do this by Angelia at Read and Reread. I'm doing Short Story September. So my goal is to read 30 short stories in the month of September. I have a few little guidelines for myself. One is, I actually only have one guideline for myself. One is I cannot read the same author 2 days in a row. So, you know, I can separate it by a day, I can separate it by 5 days, but I can't have the same author 2 days in a row. Take that back, I have two rules. Second rule is I can't do Agatha Christie short stories when I'm reading an Agatha Christie novel. I say that because I have a lot of Agatha Christie short story collections. So there you go. So when September began, I basically went to my TBR shelf and started pulling the short story collections that I have and tabbing them up and getting ready to start reading them. So, let me go through what I've read so far. So today is the 8th. I have yet to read a story today. So I'm going to cover the first 7 stories that I've read. And the first story that I read is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman from this book, The Yellow Wallpaper and Other Stories. This is, of course, a very, very famous story. My friend Karen says it is her favorite short story, and I have never read it. I don't know why I have never read it. This is such an amazing story, especially when you think about the time that it was written and what it's about. It's basically about a woman who is suffering from postpartum depression. With modern eyes, we can name that. And her husband takes her to a house in the country-ish, an estate, to relax and to rest and get over it. And he puts her in what used to be the nursery, and basically locks her in, and it has yellow wallpaper, and the story is just this woman's descent into madness. And it's an amazing story. I really enjoyed it. I was just shocked that I hadn't read this story before. And I also wish I had read this in an academic setting, because I think this is the kind of book that there's so much to discuss about. And I think that my experience of it would have been so enriched by being able to discuss it in an academic setting. As it is a story that I will definitely reread several times in the future. So that's the first one. The second one was A First-Rate Material by Sayaka Murata, which comes from this book, Life Ceremony. Sayaka Murata wrote Convenience Store Woman, which I read last month and really enjoyed. I did know, because people have told me, that Convenience Store Woman is her least weird book. So I went into this book knowing, I was expecting weird, and I got it right off the bat with A First-Rate Material. Now, I'm really curious as to whether it is cultural that I think this is weird. Like, would a Japanese reader reading these stories think these stories were strange? I don't know, because part of me is like, I shouldn't call things from other countries weird, but if they're weird in that, which they may be, that very much may be Sayaka Murata's thing, to write strange things, which is fine. I just don't know. So I'm kind of dancing around that. But this one is about, it starts with a young woman who is like having brunch or lunch or whatever with some girlfriends. Very Sex and the City. And she is newly engaged. And her friends notice the sweater she's wearing. And they ask her, oh my gosh, is that sweater made from human hair? And she's like, yes, it is. I had to take a loan out because it's so expensive. It's the best material there is. And they're talking and talking and talking about it. And in the course of this conversation, it comes up that her fiance, she can't wear the sweater around her fiance because her fiance is really grossed out by the idea of human materials being used not as humans. Like basically sweaters and stuff being made out of like human hair. Which I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop right now and think about this. Would I wear a sweater made from human hair? No, I wouldn't. Is it that much different from a sweater made from wool? Is it? I mean, I don't know. Think about it. I do know that my niece is a hairdresser, and she tells me there's an industry in India of women who will grow their hair and then cut them so they can make extensions out of them. And close to home, my own daughter has twice grown her hair and donated it to Wigs for Kids. Is that right? I think that's the organization she uses to make wigs for children who have lost their hair through medical issues. And nothing's weird about that. That's very admirable. Here on BookTube, our own Read by Fred recently did that. I mean, this is a very admirable thing to do. So is it that much different thinking about a sweater from human hair? And I was really thinking about this as I continued with the story. And then it comes up, they said, well, you know, what are you going to do for a ring then if he's not going to get you like a ring made from a human bone or a human tooth? And I'm like, okay, now it's weird. Now I'm uncomfortable. And she says, no, we can't have any of that. And her friends just think this is so weird that her fiance has this hang up about it. Go on in the story. She's at a furniture shop and she's looking at this lamp made out of fingernails. And she looks at her own fingernails and thinks how beautiful it will be when her life is over and she can be recycled into stuff to live on. And it comes out that this is a culture, like that is a very next step for a human body. Once it's been alive, you turn it into things. And in this store, they have, you know, bookshelves made out of bones and couches made out of skin and all this stuff. And she comes back, she sees her fiance, he's horrified that she is wearing this. He totally freaks out that she's wearing the sweater. And lines are drawn. He is like anti-human things and she's pro-human things and whatever. And then something happens. And it's really hard with short stories to understand where the spoiler line is. So I'm drawing the spoiler line where I personally think it is. And I think I'm getting to the spoiler line here. Something happens, an item comes up in the story that makes them both reconsider their positions. And it leaves the reader to kind of consider things. So yes, the story to my Western sensibilities was very strange. Whether it was meant to be strange or not, I don't know. But I really appreciated how much it made me think and how it made me think about things, the way she did that thing where the characters started to change their viewpoint. They started to switch places, how that really forced me to think more about it. So that was really a successful story to me, even though I was a little grossed out by it. Okay, the next story I read comes from this book, The Angel of Rome by Jess Walter. Jess Walter is an interesting author for me because I always think I'm not going to like his writing, and then I love it. I didn't think I'd like Beautiful Ruins, ended up loving it. The Cold Millions I thought would be incredibly dull. I blew through that thing, and the minute I finished that book, I started looking for real estate in Spokane, Washington. And for those of you who are not familiar with Spokane, Washington, it is a lovely city. It is a lovely city, but it is a city that is truly in the middle of nowhere. It's like, you know, I live in the Portland metro area, and you have to go a long way to be in the middle of nowhere. And I'm kind of on the outer side of it, but it's like nothing, Spokane, nothing. The last time we were through Spokane, I distinctly remember we drove up over a hill going into it, and we had just nothing, the Palouse, there were grasslands all around, and we come up the hill, and then there's a city right in front of us. It's very strange. Anyway, I digress. Most of Jess Walter's stories his writings are set in Spokane. The story included the setting, the story where it takes place. That's not really that important. The story I read is called Mr. Voice. And this one is interesting in that this is a very traditional, in a lot of ways, story. It's, you know, the first two stories I read definitely had the peculiar factor going. This one doesn't. So I thought maybe this isn't going to live up to it. But this one was this is one of my favorite books so far of the week. So Mr. Voice is about this girl. She's being raised by a single mom. She doesn't know who her dad is, but her mother tells her that her father is the love of her life. And I should say right now, this one I'm really not sure. The spoiler line's really blurry. So if I accidentally spoil things, I'm sorry. But anyway, so it's just her and her mom. And when she's like 9-ish, I guess, the garbage man's outside, sorry. When she's like 9-ish, her mom marries this guy known locally as Mr. Voice. So he's kind of he's sort of like a local celebrity, but kind of, he's known for his voiceover work. He does voiceovers for like commercials and things like that. And he's kind of a strange looking guy. He's, kind of the weird guy, but her mom marries him. And, it is kind of a weird setup. They live in a house with very thin walls, and this girl's room is next to theirs, and he narrates their spicy times. And he has a son from a previous relationship, and the girl bonds with the son because the son like walks in. He's like, you do not have to listen to this, and takes her into his room, puts headphones on her so she can listen to music while he smokes pot. And this girl is like, what is going on with this? And as time goes on, things go up and things go down with them. And then her mom leaves. And that's kind of where I'll stop with it. But the whole story is about, it ended up being so wonderfully sweet and just so much love in it. And I just felt it. Like I felt this story in my soul. And so I loved it. And, again, it was a change from the previous. I'm sorry, I have my iPad here with my list of books, and it's being dead. There we go. It was so tame in terms of how the story was told compared to the first two that I read, that I didn't think it would be successful. And it was so successful. I loved it. Loved it. Great book. That's the first one I've read so far, the only one I've read so far out of this collection. I'm really looking forward to going further in it. Okay, that was number 3. Number 4 was The Wehrwolf. So this was a Kindle single by, The Wehrwolf by Alma Katsu. It came out last September. So it's been out for about a year. I heard about it from Chris Wallach on the Book Cougars because she had read it. And so I downloaded it. You can only get it in digital form in your Kindle, or there is an Audible version of it. So if you're looking for it, there's a lot of these singles that are like that with like major authors where they do short stories. So obviously I have to put up graphic. I can't remember which side the graphic's gonna show up on. So this story really, really, really impressed me. So Alma Katsu is a horror writer. So this was a horror-ish story. I found it frightening, but not in like a horror story sort of way. So this is, Alma Katsu is clearly saying something with this. And that's one thing I really like about short stories, is that authors very clearly often are saying things in them, like the Sayaka Murata one, which is clearly talking about how we view humanity. At least that's what I think. And this one's clearly saying something. Now she's drawing a line, Alma Katsu is drawing a line between Nazis and the MAGA movement. Now this line has been drawn many times. And it's valid. I mean, it's a valid one. And if you disagree with me, you probably shouldn't be watching this channel. But yeah, but Alma Katsu does it a different way. And she ties the two together on a much different level. So this story is set in the waning days of World War II in a town in Germany. And in this town, the town itself has not seen war, really. But, obviously, most of the men have gone off to fight. As being in Europe, they are suffering from the war that way. They do know that horrible things happen in camps. There is some kind of insinuation that there's a camp sort of nearby, because maybe some people work there. But in this is a farmer who did not go to war because he was excused, I think, because his father died, something about how his father and maybe his brother died or something like that in the first war. So he was excused from this one, a kind of like a Saving Private Ryan sort of thing. And he's just a kind of very nice, ordinary guy, very gentle. He has a wife and a young daughter. A young daughter loves fairy tales. And here's where you start getting the sort of comparison. So they talk about how in Grimm's fairy tales, you have the monsters, you have the ogres, you have the werewolves, and these are monsters. They're seen as very negative. But the Nazi regime wants you to embrace them because they're part of our culture. We want to embrace these awful things and make them good because they're part of our culture. And that's where I first went, So he's dealing with it. Now, there's a group in his town led by a guy who may have deserted. We're not really sure why this guy is not fighting. And they call themselves the Wehrwolves. And this is kind of like the big bully in town, the Biff Tanner, shall we say. And they start to try to get Uwe, I think that's the farmer's name, involved in this group. And the wife is like, no, I don't want you anywhere near them. The wife is, I relate to the wife because she like has to stay away from everybody because she thinks Nazism is terrible and people get mad at her because she has views, you know, any view that goes against it is not tolerated. So she just stays away from everybody. And, but the husband's a little more tied into town because he has to be. In this town, there's like one person who has a radio. So at night, like everyone goes to this one person's house to listen to the radio. And that's how he kind of encounters this werewolf guy, the guy who leads this group called the Wehrwolves. And at this point, this werewolf guy is very much like pro-Nazi, and the Nazis are clearly losing the war, and they're starting to get allies to come in and out. And he wants to protect the town from the allies. And so that's why he wants all the men to join this group. And he starts chipping away at this farmer and going towards his insecurities. And basically what you're seeing is this farmer is becoming radicalized. So Alma Katsu is drawing a really clear line between how people bought into Nazism into how people buy into the MAGA movement. And it's very interesting the way she does it. And she did it so skillfully. I won't go more into what happens with the story. It is a great story. I highly recommend it. And I will say the part that scared me was not the story part, because I tend not to get that scared from horror novels, but the lines that she drew between our world and this world that she created. She did it impeccably well. Highly recommend this one. So that is The Wehrwolf by Alma Katsu. And then after that, so I am on story 5. I read A Magnificent Spread, also from this book by Sayaka Murata. So this is about this woman. She's married and she has a sister who is not married, but sister announced that she's engaged. And the husband, this woman and her husband, they eat this like space food, like freeze-dried processed food that's supposed to have all of the nutrients you need. It's a very, you know, futuristic sort of thing. That's how they choose to eat. The sister thinks she's a princess from an imaginary land and will only eat food from this imaginary land. So that's weird. So the sister calls one day and she says, I need you to come help me because my fiance is bringing his parents over and he wants me to cook for them. And the sister is like, the main character, the one who's married, is like, oh, this is gonna be terrible. She's like, don't cook your food. Your food is weird. And then there's a whole discussion about, is food weird and all this? And it kind of goes into that. I won't go further into the story except to say that this story fell apart for me at the end because Sayaka Murata uses the exact same tools she did in A First-Rate Material, the first story I read, of something happening to totally change the way you look at things. Not that that's bad, and I probably would have liked it had this been the first story I read, but the fact that she uses the same thing in 2 consecutive stories makes the second one not work. That is a tool that works really well once. So I think the story suffered a lot because of that. There's also, she isn't as clear on, I think, what she's trying to get you to think about in this. She tries to be too much look at all sides sort of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that, except she's trying to make the argument that should be, it just doesn't work well in this. So this was the first story I read, actually the only story I've read so far that was unsuccessful for me. So that was A Magnificent Spread by Sayaka Murata. Now I actually went ahead and read the next story. I'm not counting it because it is a whopping 1 page long. I don't think I can count it, but it looks like, and I'm very confused about what's going to happen in these collection, because it looks like she's introducing the characters from Convenience Store Women, but they're not really like them. I don't know if they were like stories to kind of build up the characters for the book as she was trying to work them out, and these are versions of them she decided not to use. I'm really curious. They were introduced in that one story, the 1 page story. So I didn't, you know, the next story that I will read out of this book in the next couple of days, we'll probably have more of an explanation about it, but I'm really curious about what's going to happen with it. Okay, Number 6. So at this point I had finished reading 3-Act Tragedy by Agatha Christie, which meant I could go pull one of my Agatha Christie collections. So I pulled this one, The Witness for the Prosecution and Other Short Stories. So I actually only had 3 stories in this collection that I have not yet read. So this will be a really quick book to go through. And the first one was The Witness for the Prosecution, which is something I have heard of but had not read. I do also have the play of it, which I hope to read soon. So this is the short story version of it. I have a friend who is an attorney, and she told me that she was on some kind of mailing from some law organization. And in this, they listed like the top 10 accurate movies, or movies that people in law or prosecutors or whatever should be watching because they're really good. They're really good adaptations, or they really apply well. And one of them is My Cousin Vinny, by the way. But Witness for the Prosecution was another one. So I went into this knowing it was kind of a courtroom one, and it is. And it's really, this is, Agatha Christie, we all know her from her novels. But what people don't know as well is that she is a very successful playwright. I mean, the longest running play in history is written by this woman. It's The Mousetrap. But she's also a successful short story. And I think, honestly, of the 3, she's probably most successful as a short story writer. She does a really good job of really getting to the point, telling the story that she needs to tell with enough background to keep you going. And this is about a man who is accused of murdering a rich old woman who he had befriended. And all evidence points to him. So he's talking with this defense attorney, and all evidence points to him. And he's like, no. The time does not match up, because I couldn't have killed this woman because I was home with my wife. And so the defense attorney's like, okay, I'll go find your wife. So he went and found the wife, and the wife's like, no. She has a different story to tell. And then evidence about the wife comes out, and how this defense attorney deals with all this it's fascinating. I can't wait to read the play. And once I read the play, I'm going to find the movie adaptation, because my friend tells me that's very good. It's a Billy Wilder movie. So Billy Wilder was quite good. I really enjoy this one. This is a mystery, so I'm really going to be careful. Spoilers on it, but highly recommend The Witness for the Prosecution. And I should finish this one pretty quickly because I only have 2 stories left. And then finally, the last book that I read in this chunk is, I make my pause falling over here. I went back to Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and I read An Extinct Angel. So this is there's a really good comp I could make for this book, and I'm afraid to do it because even making that comp would be a spoiler. But this is basically talking about, so I'm not going to do it. If you really want to know what it is, you can email me. My email stuff's down below, and I will tell you, but I'm not going to, it's a spoiler. It would be a spoiler for me to say what the good comp of it is. But this is about a time when there was this very special angel, very special kind of angel in the world, and what it was like when this angel was in the world. Very short story. It was like 5 pages long. Very thought-provoking. I think that I'm going to really enjoy these. I mean, the only collection I've done more than one story, the 2 were Life Ceremony, which is a 50% success rate, but this was 100%. And I'm really looking forward to reading more from Charlotte Perkins Gilman. So looking forward, I will do this again, probably next Thursday or Friday. I'm sorry, my husband's cooking. As I said, you will always have that noise in my background. I do have one that I'm about to add to the reading rotation. I haven't yet, but that's this one that I recently picked up at a little free library. Hate Ship, Friendship, Courtship, Love Ship, Marriage, not Marriage Ship, just Marriage, by Alice Munro. I will start this one this week. So you will see this one, and you will probably see a different Agatha Christie, if not next time I do this, the time after that, because I only have 2 stories left in that one. But anyway, I am really enjoying this. Oh, one other thing I am going to tell you. I am going to read, when I can, I have to get my hands on a copy because my library does not have a copy of it. I have to request it. A short story by Chekhov called The Bet. My friend says that's her favorite short story. So basically, if someone tells me a short story is their favorite short story, it goes on my list. So if you have a favorite short story that I haven't read yet, I have to have not read. That's the other rule I have for myself. So I have 3 rules. I said 1, I have 3. They have to be stories I haven't yet read. So if you have a favorite short story, put it down below and I will try to get it into my rotation. So anyway, I'm rambling. That is the first 7 stories of my short story September. I will be back. I have another 6, 7, 8 stories to talk about. Thank you very much. Please give me a thumbs up, like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.